Before she was a solo pop force, going only by her middle name, Rihanna, who was then known as Robin Fenty, was a 15-year-old girl in a girl group hoping to realize her dreams as a singer. From what I could find, the group was unnamed, but it was formed with two other girls who were classmates of Robin's, and instead of original music, they did covers. When the girls performed in 2003, it was Robin alone who caught the attention of Evan Rogers, a music producer who was vacationing in Barbados with his wife. He'd helped craft the early sound of artists like Christina Aguilera, Kelly Clarkson, and Christina Milian. Evan then had the group audition, and coincidentally they did a Destiny's Child song, and it was clear that Robin was the star power of the group, so he arranged a meeting with just her and her mom. Later, Evan Rogers and songwriting partner Carl Sturken invited Robin and her mom to come to New York to record a demo tape. And they couldn't do it all at once since Rihanna was still going to school at the time, so they started recording it over holidays. And she said that she had a feeling that her career was going to take off when they asked why she and her mom had to keep returning home instead of recording the demo all in one go. And Pon De Replay was actually one of the songs that was on the initial demo tape, and Evan and Carl signed Rihanna to their company, Syndicated Rhythm Productions, making her their first artist, and then they started sending out that demo tape to record labels. One of those labels obviously was Def Jam Recordings, of which Jay-Z was both president and CEO. He thought that the demo had potential, so he had Robin come in and perform some songs in person. He was impressed, and so was L.A. Reid, who told Jay-Z not to let Robin leave the building without signing a record deal. And she said that even though she was extremely nervous, the audition was a success, saying, "The audition definitely went well. They locked me into the office until 3 a.m. And Jay-Z said, "There's only two ways out. Out of the door after you sign this deal or through this window." And we were on the 29th floor. Very flattering.
What did he say to you? He said something to you.
Oh, yes. He said, "We don't sing songs here. We sing artists." And there was this little pause, and I was nervous. But then he said, "And we're interested."
He said something about a window and a door or something.
Oh, then he said, he did it homework.
I did a lot of homework on you, this lady.
He said, there are two ways to leave here, either through the door with the deal signed or through this window, and we're on the 29th floor.
I know more recently people have been like, oh, this was really Rihanna saying that Jay-Z and L.A. Reid and Def Jam were all threatening her life. Genuinely, while I would never let my hypothetical child enter the music industry, I don't think this was a death threat. If anything, I just think it was a very, very unprofessional joke. Like, imagine being in an interview and they're like, you can either take this job or jump out the window. Very weird. I don't understand why they couldn't let her go home, but it was also said that it took so long to work out a deal because Robin already had a manager and a lawyer, courtesy of Syndication Rhythm Productions, so they were working out a deal with Def Jam, and eventually they settled on a 6-album deal. Def Jam was actually the first label to respond to the demo tape, so then all the other meetings with the other labels, those were canceled immediately. This was in early 2005, and it was also at this time that Rihanna chose her new stage name. Rihanna, of course, like I mentioned, it is her middle name, but it wasn't one of those cases where she'd already been going by her middle name her whole life or anything. And she's actually said a few times over the years that her friends and family do still call her Robin. But as I'm sure most of you know, there's already a very famous pop singer with the same name, spelled the exact same way, so the change was definitely the smart thing to do. After signing with Def Jam, Rihanna officially moved to the US to keep recording her debut album. I was curious as to where she lived because most sources didn't specifically say with her mom or dad, and her parents were divorced at the time. Nothing said that either of them moved with her, and I did know that she had younger siblings, so I was like, who went to the US with Rihanna? And from what I could find, Rihanna moved by herself, and she mainly lived with Evan Rogers and his wife in Connecticut, I believe, if they weren't in New York. And she did say that it was hard leaving her friends and family, especially so young because she was only 16 at the time. But Rihanna also said that she felt like she knew that she had to do this in order to make her career work. And in May of 2005, Rihanna released her debut single, Pon De Replay. Again, this was actually the song that made Jay-Z want to meet her when he heard the demo tape. And apparently at first he believed the song was too big for an unknown artist. And at first I didn't know if that meant too loud or too different, thinking of the song's dancehall influence. And obviously I was pretty young when the song came out, but just from what I know of music at the time, it seems like Rihanna hit the scene at a really good time because it seemed, especially in R&B and pop in the early mid-2000s, there was this increased interest in both Latin and Caribbean influenced music in the US. And indeed, that is thought to be what helped Pon De Replay take off, so essentially what Jay-Z meant about the song being too big was that he knew that it likely would be a hit, but if the song got too popular, especially as a debut single, the song could become bigger than Rihanna and end up hurting her career in the long run. And obviously, he was right about the song being a hit, as it did eventually peak at number 2 on the Hot 100. And other than, I think, Hey Y'all, I remember Pon De Replay being the first song that I was just completely obsessed with. It's catchy, infectious, bassy, and even if you're not in the club, like I was not in the club in 2005, it still makes you want to move.
A lot of people at the label thought it should have been, it should have been the first single. But then there's some people saying, no. But the people who wanted it to be, they won because it was the perfect song for the summer. There were so many songs that we could have had for our first single, but this song, it needed to be out summer. And we put it out summer, and it's doing really well.
And the song is something about so general and universal, just wanting to hear your song again so that you can vibe out, party, what have you. Everybody understands that feeling. But then it's possible the song might be one of your first introductions to dancehall, but there are also pop, R&B, reggae influences, so it's likely at least something kind of familiar will jump out at you. The phrase Pon De Replay is Bajan Creole for play it again or put it on replay, as you would ask a DJ. And the song is actually peppered with a few Bajan Creole phrases, which are also a reminder that Rihanna's an island girl because, back then, even still now, kind of being quote-unquote exotic, how you would describe a bird or something, it was thought of as both more interesting and appealing. But on a positive note, even though this is a pop song, it definitely shows that there was some effort taken to make a song for Rihanna, rather than Evan or Carl just being like, here, we've had this song in the vault for 5 years, Christina didn't want it, just record this. And Rihanna said about the song, my music doesn't have a specific genre. It's a fusion of reggae, hip-hop, and R&B, so it's new, it's fresh. It's just a song telling the DJ to put my song on the turntables to play over and over again. It's also wild that in this article specifically and a few others, they were just calling Rihanna a young Bajan singer because nowadays you would never not refer to Rihanna by name. And in the Pon De Replay video, Rihanna and her friends are at the club, and Rihanna, of course, is getting the DJ to both turn up her song and also play it again.
More times, the music's too low.
I'll make him turn it up.
Peak 2000s fashion with the sequins and the bangles. Not the time in general. Rihanna's fashion was very girly, colorful, girl next door. Very fun, very bright, very accessible, but usually in videos and performances, the same vibe would be kept. It seemed like at this time, like 2005, 2006, a crop top hated to see Rihanna coming. And speaking of, I do think it's funny that so many teenagers used to have music videos of them in the club. Rihanna's 16, maybe 17 here, so it's like, girl, what club are you at? Maybe it's one of those teen clubs, maybe they all got fakes. But it is something that I have noticed in general. But I guess that's what happens when a lot of these artists or artists back then, they were making songs for an audience that was probably just slightly older than them. And not that I think anything in Pon De Replay is inappropriate or anything. I'm just saying that often in these videos for these party-based songs, the labels had the teenagers in the club just because they were often making music that was probably also going to be played at the club. And not only, like I mentioned, was Pon De Replay a hit as Jay-Z predicted, the song did also launch Rihanna into pop stardom. It definitely was not with the reputation that Rihanna has now, as in she wasn't immediately cemented as a pop it girl, but definitely this new singer that people were very fascinated with, and they were intrigued to see if she was here to stay. And this was almost entirely off the back of Pon De Replay since it was her only song for a few months. She had no features at the time, and even after the album's release, it was still definitely the song that was pushed the most. It wasn't an immediate hit though, because it did take about 9 weeks after release to start gaining traction on the charts. And again, it did eventually peak at number 2, shut out from the top spot by 2 other pop classics, We Belong Together and Don't Ya.
And the first time I heard it on the radio, I was in a mall. And then I just kept hearing it more and more and more. And just started claiming, it appeared on the Billboard charts at 97. And I was like, what? Billboard? Like, I wouldn't think in a million years. But I just kept claiming, it just kept claiming and claiming. I was so happy.
But in total, Pon De Replay would spend 12 weeks inside of the top 10. Critics were of the opinion that the song definitely showed promise, with several later claiming it was one of the strongest offerings on Music of the Sun. And even others who felt like maybe it was too soon to tell because one hit song doesn't always translate into a sustained career, they could at least admit the song was enjoyable. Rihanna also said that around this time, fans started to notice her in public and ask for her autograph, and she was definitely starstruck by it all, because obviously for the majority of her life, she'd been on the other end of that, idolizing other pop stars, hoping to meet them one day. The month following Pon De Replay's release, Rihanna performed the song at the Def Jam Showcase.
I have the brand new artist, Rihanna, we gonna get it poppin'. She's something that you want, she's something that you need.
Of course, to promote herself and her upcoming album. It was at this showcase that Beyonce was said to have pointed out Rihanna to L.A. Reid, saying that she was a beast. And at the time, in several interviews, Rihanna was saying that Beyonce was really supportive of her career and even wrote her a card to wish her well before one of her performances.
And it was after one of my showcases, and he was introducing me to everyone from the label. Then he finally said, okay, one more person. And there she was. And I could not speak.
And she gave you some advice.
Yes, she did. She just told me to, when I get on stage, let loose, have fun, and be in control.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to let it go.
No.
Because, she'd be like, what?
And some people use this whole situation as evidence that Beyonce kind of handpicked Rihanna to be Def Jam's priority, even over contemporaries like Tierra Marie. And others say that because Beyonce was, Beyonce, a successful solo act in her right after Dangerously in Love. Having been in the position herself before, she probably just knew what it took to be a breakout star and recognize that it factor in Rihanna. And then, of course, Beyonce was with Jay-Z, so her opinion probably held a little weight there, too. And there was also the Destiny's Child tribute performance that Tierra Marie, A. Marie, and Rihanna did at the World Music Awards, where they performed Lose My Breath. And L.A. Reid recalled, "The funny thing about Rihanna's success was that we signed 2 girls at that time. We thought Tierra Marie would be the big star. We spent more time on her, did more work on her, and paid more attention to her." But then he said that after Beyonce made her comment about Rihanna, a light bulb went off. Both Rihanna and Tierra, as well as other artists like Neo, would attend the Def Jam showcase and often performed at a lot of industry events, usually organized by Def Jam and sometimes another company, obviously to get the artist's name out there, which is going to make them and the label more money in the long run. Aside from these showcases and award shows, Rihanna did several TV performances and interviews, everywhere from the BBC to TRL to 106 & Park to the Tyra Banks show. And obviously because it was still 2005, social media definitely was not what it is now. So while a lot of these artists had websites and MySpace, things like that, the majority of the times you would see them perform is obviously going to either be in person, on TV, or just simply photos of those performances. And Rihanna's featured in a lot of teen and pop-focused magazines at the time. I remember buying a lot of them. And this was still the era where a lot of those magazines would include free posters, so lots and lots of Rihanna pictures from this time period. In mid-August of 2005, so just a couple weeks before her album's release, If It's Lovin' That You Want was put out as the album's second and actually final single.
Friend, I could be your home. It's something you want, then you should make me your girl.
This one has a more summery, beachy feel, and it's a bright blend of reggae and R&B. In an interview with MTV, Rihanna said about the song is basically telling a guy, if it's loving that you want, you should make me your girl because I've got what you need. Which is basically the song's chorus. To me, and probably most people, the song's catchiest part is that fluttery way that Rihanna sings the pre-chorus. I believe it even became a meme in the past couple years or so. And to fit that breezy, summery feel, the music video was shot on a California beach with Rihanna dancing, riding jet skis with her girls, and then also giving us some mermaid vibes. Unfortunately, If It's Lovin' That You Want didn't capture people or the charts the same way that Pon De Replay did. Especially in the US, because the song only peaked at number 36 here compared to peaking at number 11 in the UK and then at 9 in Australia and New Zealand, so clearly resonated better elsewhere. But of course, Rihanna's debut album, Music of the Sun, still came as expected on August 29th, 2005. It looks like the album's cover is just a zoomed-in version of this shot from the album shoot. It also seems to me that a lot of those pictures were also used for an album sampler, which was just like an EP with about half the content of Music of the Sun on it. That way it will hopefully obviously encourage fans to want to check out the full album. And the album's title, according to Rihanna, was a nod to her Caribbean heritage. She said the word sun represents the Caribbean, her culture, and herself. And she also said, talking about it makes me just a little homesick. Barbados is lovely and it's perfect. It's warm with beautiful beaches and nice people, but my new home is in the US and I'm here for a purpose, to fulfill my dreams.
And I just had it in my head, that's gonna happen. I always said by the time I'm 18, I want to be a singer. If not, forget it.
Let's see. Look, you have big goals.
Yeah, because after you get 18, it's kind of harder. And I had a backup plan. Psychology. I always loved doing analyzing people. I was always very good at that. But this was the bigger picture.
But still, the parts that she loved about home, the warmth, the beachiness, the easiness, the easygoing aspect of it, I do feel that the album's title track, it represents all of that perfectly.
Dance to the music of the sun. The sun.
Compared to a song like If It's Lovin' That You Want, Music of the Sun is definitely more laid back, but it still feels very summery, even very glam. Several of the lyrics, like Can't Explain the Feeling, like the sunlight brings to life new meaning, And can't you feel the music in the air? Close your eyes, let the rhythm take you there. Or doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, come and dance to the music of the sun. All those lyrics talk about just giving yourself over to a good beat, using the music to connect to your friends and family, which is basically what the whole album is about. And just the day before Music of the Sun's release, Rihanna also performed at that year's VMA pre-show. Of course, she did Pon De Replay, and the whole carnival-themed performance was basically a tribute to Barbados. And in several early interviews, Rihanna made the point that Caribbean music in general is just very often male-dominated, so she hoped that her popularity and the success of Pon De Replay would open doors for other women in genres like reggae, dancehall, and soca. And she said, "I have to say that the reggae genre has really been male-dominated, and I feel honored to be among the first females." And I'm assuming Rihanna wasn't saying that she's an out-and-out reggae artist, more so saying that she hoped becoming big in the pop space would mean she'd be one of the artists who helped spread that sound to people who didn't particularly listen to reggae. At least that's what I'm assuming, because also in that same interview, she described her music as more R&B, especially vocally, and then said the Caribbean influence mainly came in the actual production of the songs. And there are several Caribbean influence songs on the album, like You Don't Love Me, also known as No No No, which features Vybz Kartel.
I should have left you a long time ago, no.
This song samples the 1994 song of the same name, released by Jamaican singer Don Penn.
You don't love me, and I know now.
I believe her version, which is a reggae song, is also a cover of Willie Cobb's 1960s blues version, which is obviously the original.
You don't love me, yes I know.
Rihanna's lyrics are different, but thematically her version is very similar to Don Penn's, with Rihanna carrying on the idea of being with this guy, but it's clear from his actions that he doesn't love her, but she still can't let go. And then Vybz Kartel plays the role of the guy who's clearly trying to convince Rihanna that he can change for the better, or at least is just trying to convince her to believe it. And fun fact, but what seems like her only recorded performance of this song is actually the first video uploaded to the Rihanna YouTube channel. And other than You Don't Love Me, there are actually a few songs on Music of the Sun that do take inspiration from other older songs. There's A Thug in My Life samples the DeBarge song A Dream, which was released in 1983. Rihanna's version is slightly bassier with those wiry West Coast synths. And lyrically, it feels kind of like a precursor to Unfaithful. It's written kind of similarly. But instead of, how do I tell my man I'm cheating on him? It's how do I tell my mom I'm dating this thug? She wouldn't be happy even though I love him and I feel like he treats me well. In its first week, Music of the Sun sold 69,000 copies, securing it the 10th spot on the Billboard 200. Overall, reviews were mixed, with several critics saying that while there were highlights on the album, Music of the Sun came across as a mixed bag.
There's such a wide variety of types of songs on the album. There's the up tempos, similar to Pon De Replay. There's the mid tempos, then we slow it down on the ballads, then we bring it back to the old school lovers rock reggae. And there's so many different messages on this album. Like, you could listen to it for any situation, any occasion.
Most of the reviews seem to credit the album's writers and producers, mainly Evan Rogers and Carl Sturken, for having their pulse on musical trends rather than anything singular that Rihanna was bringing to the table. Because, kind of unfortunately, like I was mentioning, that island flair, which obviously is authentic to Rihanna, it also just happened to have already been trendy, and therefore it just didn't feel as unique as it might have. In their 2.5-star review of the album, Slant even said that to them, Pon De Replay felt reminiscent of Beyonce's Baby Boy. And they note, the recent glut of teen R&B chanteuses is not unlike the steady stream of faceless Latinas who rode the freestyle wave of the 80s, further magnified by Full Force's recent renaissance in more urban territory. The freestyle production team is behind Rihanna's That La La La, a track that pays homage to the singer's executive producer and, incidentally, Beyonce's main squeeze, Jay-Z. And Rihanna's debut, Music of the Sun, is yet another diamond on Hova's wristwatch. Despite the formulaic nature of the album, it thankfully features the always refreshing touch of pop veterans Evan Rogers and Carl Sturken of syndicated rhythm productions. Still, if inconsistency is Music of the Sun's biggest flaw, Rihanna is doing quite well by today's paint-by-numbers R&B standards. And several of the reviews, probably not news, they also compare Rihanna to Beyonce. Sure, it would have happened anyway, but Rihanna being on Jay's label likely didn't help. And so many don't just bring up Beyonce, but are like, watch out Beyonce, here comes Rihanna, or straight up calling Rihanna the Bayesian Beyonce, which apparently was a very common nickname for her at the time. So aside from just reviewing the album, they're like, is this better than Dangerously in Love? Was the album enough to make Beyonce sweat? And it seems like all of this even predates the fake Rihanna-Jay-Z affair rumors, but you just know they were going to find a way to bring Beyonce into it. Aside from the music itself, other Music of the Sun reviews question Rihanna's actual abilities, both as a vocalist and songwriter. Not like, oh, let's dissect Rihanna's songwriting abilities, but just questioning how involved she was with her music at all. Like I mentioned, Music of the Sun was written and produced mainly by Evan Rogers and Carl Sturken, with additions by notable names like Stargate and D-Mile. That La 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 was actually D-Mile's major production debut. It's a very punchy, percussive track in which Rihanna tells her frenemies to stop pushing up on her man. And to me, the song is very, very in the spirit of Mariah Carey's It's Like That.
What? DJ keeps on spinning the cut, it's like that,
Which would have come out about 6 or 7 months before Music of the Sun. But as far as credits for Rihanna, she's credited as a writer on Here I Go Again, Now I Know, and Willing to Wait. She's not credited as the sole writer on any of them, but I did notice that most of these are the more emotional and often more traditionally R&B inspired songs, which kind of lines up with what she was saying in a lot of interviews of seeing herself as mainly someone in the R&B realm. I really like Willing to Wait, and I think it's at least partly because it has that more classic, like 90s R&B sort of feel, but a lot of reviews, even that slant one that I mentioned, they didn't like it, and they found it, along with the song Now I Know, to be one of the album's main outliers. Not only did they consider those songs some of the lyrically weaker ones, but they also felt that they were too old for a 17-year-old to be singing. And for example, that slant review does go on to say, while most of the album coasts atop its light Caribbean influence, the middle stretch of the record sinks like a Janet album. Willing to Wait is Rihanna's own Let's Wait a While, and the album's final track, Now I Know, is a too mature, outdated, and string-laden affair for such a young, seemingly hip artist. Rihanna also has a writing credit on Hypnotize, which I just heard for the first time this year, because it is a bonus track for Music of the Sun included on the Japanese version of the album. It's not available on streaming, but there is a version on YouTube that you can listen to. And I was reading through a lot of the comments on the YouTube upload of that song that I was talking about, and it seems like this is an underrated fan favorite based on a lot of those comments. And then, of course, obviously with time, people became way less interested in whether Rihanna was writing her music because the more songs that she released, the clearer it became that she was not branding herself as any sort of songwriter. Rihanna did say in later interviews, though, that with time, she got a lot more comfortable with saying no and also choosing songs that she felt actually fit her rather than just saying yes to whatever songs came her way because she felt like she couldn't refuse them. And even looking at reviews of Music of the Sun after Rihanna became Rihanna, so some from the 2010s, one written a couple years ago actually, the general consensus seems to be like, yeah, this is one of Rihanna's weaker albums overall, but I have a soft spot for it because obviously it's where everything began for Rihanna. Even personally, I remember a few years ago going back like, let me get back into this album and check out what's on here other than Pon De Replay because I don't even remember. And then I realized I had not really heard any of those songs probably since having the CD, which was like elementary school. And honestly, I think if you ask anyone to name the most popular, even just their personal favorite Rihanna songs, none of her heavy hitters other than like Pon De Replay are really on Music of the Sun. And maybe this has less to do with the quality of the songs or the cohesiveness of the album and just the fact that only 2 singles were promoted. Like, who knows, we might remember some of these songs more if they were made and promoted as singles. But again, usually an album getting so few singles means that there wasn't a ton of faith that if we put out a 3rd single that was going to perform well. But if I had to pick a 3rd single for Music of the Sun, if not Hypnotize, out of the standard tracks, I think Rush would have been a good choice. And it's about the sort of rush or, butterflies in your stomach you get when you meet someone cute and interesting. Rihanna, of course, is the girl's perspective, while Cardinal Official, who features on the song, provides the man's. Rush is very upbeat, synthy, and staticky in a good way. I definitely would consider Rush to be one of the more energetic tracks on Music of the Sun. To further promote the album, Rihanna did go on some smaller tours, though she wouldn't do an entire concert tour until her sophomore album. She did headline the Secret Body Spray tour, obviously meant to promote both Music of the Sun and Secret Body Spray, which was Rihanna's first major endorsement. The tour included 9 stops, mostly at malls, with Rihanna performing 5 songs from Music of the Sun, and one from the This Is Rihanna mixtape, which came out a few months after the album. Seems like the goal was to pick a few songs that represented the range of sounds on Music of the Sun, because she really does dabble in a lot on this album. Like, aside from the R&B, the hip-hop, the reggae, the dancehall, and pop sounds, Rihanna's also got songs like The Last Time, which is this sort of Latin-influenced, guitar-based breakup ballad.
Like a knife. It's the last time you're ever gonna.
I couldn't find any performance clips from the mall tour because it was 2005 and people didn't know that Rihanna was going to be massive, so it's not necessarily weird that they didn't record all of her performance. But I did find a clip of her singing a piece of the song for a radio interview that she did to promote the tour.
Last time I'm ever gonna cry these tears.
And though none of the full performances from this Secret Body Spray tour seem to have been recorded, while on tour, Rihanna did record a little mini video diary, so you can see clips of a lot of these performances, just not the full thing, and then studio versions of the songs are kind of edited over them. A press release about the Secret Body Spray tour reads, "The concerts are free, but P&G is distributing hundreds of VIP stage front tickets in each city via promos with local radio stations, and online networking site MySpace.com, where it's sponsoring Rihanna's page. She's already signed on about 4,000 friends on MySpace through her first 2 stops in Cincinnati and Chicago." Apparently the turnout for the stops was all pretty good, with them being able to give away all of the VIP tickets to people who wanted them, and then on top of that, Rihanna succeeding in pulling in more passerby from all on top of that to come to the concert. In addition to the Secret Body Spray tour, Rihanna also opened a few dates for Gwen Stefani's Harajuku Lovers tour. Seems like coincidentally she filled in for Sierra for at least one date. And I did also find an interview from the time where Rihanna said that she was going to tour soon to open for 50 Cent. I couldn't find any clips, videos, any confirmation of that on like his tour schedule or anything, so I'm assuming maybe that fell through. And then that November, she made what I think is still her only appearance at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, singing Pon De Replay, of course. And like I've been saying, Music of the Sun was not a complete flop, but it was pretty clear that Pon De Replay was the album's big hit. So at this time, which again is around late 2005, early 2006, it is still up in the air whether Rihanna is actually going to transcend one-hit wonder status. Evan Rogers even said that at one point Rihanna had been feeling herself a little too much after Pon De Replay popped off because, you know, she's a high schooler at this point. And Evan even said that Rihanna eventually became concerned over what the label might do if she couldn't recapture the success of Pon De Replay. He said, "Jay-Z called us because Rihanna had been acting up a little bit. He brought her back down to earth and pointed out this could all be over in a minute. And she teared up. It was some real tough love. We were sitting in a parking lot in New York after a dance rehearsal and reassuring her. She was like, but what would happen? Will they drop me? We went through a scary period putting together her next album." And aside from just having the goal of keeping Rihanna's name in people's mouths, when you realize Music of the Sun didn't perform as Def Jam likely hoped that it would have, it does make sense that promotions for her sophomore album only started about 6 months after she released her debut album and less than a year after she put out Pon De Replay. Basically, what saved Rihanna's career was SOS, kind of ironic, which was released in February of 2006. This actually wasn't a Rodgers and Sturkin collaboration, and Evan actually said that when L.A. Reid gave them the song, they were confused because it didn't really fit the Caribbean sound that they'd introduced for Rihanna, and instead it just was a more general pop hit. Not only does it sample Tainted Love, the chorus or one of the verses, I believe one of the verses, actually references several popular songs of decades past. But Evan said that when they questioned L.A. Reid about this, his response was, "Fuck that, make them dance, she's Madonna." So maybe saying SOS saved Rihanna is a little bit dramatic because I don't think Def Jam ever confirmed they were going to drop Rihanna, so maybe they weren't. But it likely helped that they didn't have to release a ton of singles after her debut to finally get her #1. And it's not like they dropped Rihanna's Caribbean influence sound entirely on her sophomore album, A Girl Like Me. They just didn't promote the album with it, waiting until the album was already released to put out the Sean Paul collaboration Break It Off, which was the 4th single. A little under a year after Music of the Sun's release, Rihanna made her film debut in 2006's Bring It On, All or Nothing. When I say I am and always have been obsessed with this movie, it's probably because I already liked the other 2 Bring It On movies and Rihanna, but I do think in general this is the best one. In this one, Brittany, who's played by Hayden Panettiere, she leaves her Beverly Hills squad at Pacific Vista to secretly cheer her new school, Crenshaw Heights, which is in a lower income area. But anyway, all the high school cheer squads, they're competing to be in a Rihanna video, which is what the big competition is. Give it up for Rihanna! So they're mentioning her, mentioning being in a Rihanna video all throughout the movie, and then Rihanna judges the final cheer competition and ends racism, all in a day's work.
They're so ghetto.
You know what, Winnie? I've learned that a lot of talented people come out of the ghetto.
I didn't mean it like that.
Yes, you did. But that's okay.
And Pon De Replay was also used for the ending credit scene. Not sure if Rihanna was chosen to be in this movie for any reason other than having a few hit songs, since A Girl Like Me was released at this point too, and her being the perfect sort of star to cameo in a movie like this. And I'm also thinking because she was so relatively new, her fee probably was not insane yet. Like I mentioned, there was no tour just for Music of the Sun, so Rihanna would perform most of the songs from this album when she toured A Girl Like Me on the Rihanna Live and Concert Tour in the summer and fall of 2006. I feel like, if anything, over the 20 years, Music of the Sun, like I was saying, it's most remembered as the genesis point for Rihanna, the album that put her on the scene, and of course gave her one of her biggest songs. And today, Pon De Replay has gone 5 times platinum, and in 2020, for the song's 15-year anniversary, Rihanna did express gratitude to her fans for supporting her in her career, and more generally, supporting what she called the song that started it all. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, if you'd like to become a channel member and get early access to videos, the link is in the description. And again, thank you so very much for watching. I love you all so very much, and we'll see you so very soon. Bye-bye.